Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Cardiff Central podcast. We discuss the festive derbies. We're Cardiff are at the midpoint of the season, and we preview Europe. Uh, we also discuss how we're going to flag every last ounce of flesh out of Josh McNally. And to hear more on that, keep listening. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cardiff Central podcast. As ever, it's me, Harley, in the hot seat. I am joined by the boys, Fraser and Dan. How are you both? Happy New Year. How was Christmas?
Happy New Year, yeah. Fun. Christmas as always. Absolutely gutted to be back to work now, though.
Yeah, similarly, pretty sad, pretty bleak week, but yeah, it was a great Christmas, very relaxing.
Yeah, so I had a fantastic my first proper Christmas with a toddler. So Christmas Day felt like a week, and the time it took for her to open presents, get distracted by one, and then go, oh look, more presents, and and there's just sort of half-open packets everywhere as well. But I did buy myself a fantastic Christmas present, which I mentioned on the wrap last week. So last night, so you can listen to that. Anyway, so it's been a bit of a while since we've been off air. We had a nice extended Christmas break. Dan, current university employer, me, a former university employer. We're used to our nice long Christmases, so go for that. So just quick bit of signing news to catch up on. So Dan, if you want to just give a rundown of everyone who's signed, maybe just go since sort of mid-December, just so
Yeah,
all
so
up to date.
last podcast before Christmas, we covered Belcher and Ben Thomas had signed new deals. Then in the couple of days after that, Big Al Lawrence and Cam Winnett were added to that list as well. So good to retain their services. And then on the long side of Christmas, we had the news that Louis Hennessy has signed a short-term loan deal from Bath to cover the outside centre slot and made his debut in the Ospreys game on New Year's Day. And then just this week, then Regan Grace was confirmed as having signed a permanent deal till the end of the season, having been released from his Bath contract. So he comes in to ease some of the winger worries, and also, I suppose, gives himself a chance to get back on the pitch and stake his claim for any international honours as well.
So how are we feeling about the bid business? I think we all agreed having Big Al and Winnett sign on are really good bits of business. But in terms of the Hennessy thing, potential trial run to try and get him back to from Bath permanently. I know he's signed a long-term contract, but you never know what that really means in rugby. And I'm not sure if the owners are particularly against buying out a player if it's in Jockey's long-term plans. And then Regan Grace, potential risk given his injury record of late.
Yeah, I think Regan Grace is definitely a risk, but I mean, he's like, I don't know, he reminds me of when obviously he hasn't actually shown us that much of what he can do in rugby union. I mean, he hasn't played, I mean, how many minutes he played in total? I don't even know, but reminds me of like wishing well on a player that hasn't yet made, like Gavin Henson when he was old. I always thought, oh, he's going to come back and he's going to be who he was when he was like, he's going to reach that potential. I'm worried that with Regan Grace, it's going to be similar. We don't actually see what he can actually do at any point. But I mean, fingers crossed, I think it's worth a punt, and he's got the pace that you can't buy or teach or anything. He's got that X factor that if it does click and if he's able to, keep his legs on, he'll be all right. I think worth a punt.
Yeah, I agree. I think the circumstances around it are obviously that we've got Mason Grady, Theo Cabango, Ewan Thomas, Ewan Stevens, sorry, and Harry Millard, all sidelined at the moment. And I think, particularly with the Grady one, if it still works the same as it did a couple of years ago, with him being injured on international duty, there'll be some sort of payout from the WRU there, or the WRU's insurers anyway, to cover sort of the loss to Cardiff there of Grady being injured on his national duty. So to use that money on Grace in an almost weird like try before you buy scenario, really, I suppose, in the next 6 months is it's fairly low risk in that sense. But obviously, like, preface this with not being a doctor at all, but just anecdotally of watching rugby, you see a guy like back-to-back really bad Achilles injuries. Obviously, had a bit of a injury hit time at the start of this season, and yeah, it gets to a point where even though it's obviously bad luck to do your Achilles twice, and you wouldn't say he's injury prone yet, in that he sort of picks up lots of different knocks. The impact of the body of not playing in that long and then trying to come back and perform at the highest level, it kind of reminds me a bit of when we signed Sam Moore a couple of years ago from Sale, the number 8, and he was having chronic he was like knee problems or something. And yeah, on paper you're like, if he can stay fit, it's great. But obviously that if was he never actually did get fit, and I think he went to the Ospreys and has disappeared now. I don't know if he ever actually played for the Ospreys. So yeah, I'm hoping that Grace is in a slightly better spot than that. It seems like he's ready to go for this weekend, and we'll get on to future team selections. But yeah, as Fraser said, if we do get a bit out of him, we can manage him a bit carefully. He's obviously got incredible sort of natural physical talent there. You look at his highlight reel from his time in rugby league, and pace and ability to change direction and not drop any pace as well. He seems like the kind of ideal guy that we want on our left wing there. And I suppose the other side to that as well is that getting a winger in who is top quality and doesn't have any sort of injury record and is available for now for 6 months for us, that's not something that we would just be able to do. We're not going to be in a position to go and grab a top quality player. So in a sort of Grace or nobody scenario, it's better to have Grace there and at least try and plug the gap for a bit, even if it doesn't quite work out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I suppose a lot of people's big name that they were thinking, oh well, we can always pull from the rags with Dewi Cross. He's also on a long-term injury, so that doesn't really help. So we'll move on to the festive derbies. Just going to merge them in together because effectively both games are sort of blurred into my mind. So we beat Dragons 24-22 at Dave Parade, and there was that terrible 13-all draw on New Year's Day against the Ospreys. I'll let you both vent, and if there's anything I want to add, I'll add on at the end. Do you want to start, Fraser?
Yeah, I was at the Dragons match. The atmosphere is great. I think it always is. To be fair, on a Boxing Day, it was a pretty exciting game. I thought it was really fun. It was like a classic Cardiff Dragons match with us sneaking over the line at the last. I think we scored at 75th minute or something. I'm not sure. Can't remember. And I enjoyed Callum Sheedy's missed conversion or his inability to kick the ball beyond the edge of play. So the game kept going for another couple of minutes. Quite fun right at the end. I think that one. I mean, my main takeaway is Falatau, despite ending limping and with blood all over his face, survived and played really well and seemingly still not injured. And the other thing I just wanted to raise is that I think Alex Mann threw up again, and I know that's something that's been happened previously in lots of games, and he did it again against Dragons, which is very unusual. I don't know what that's about, but curious. And then the Ospreys game was an absolute mess. But I don't know if Dan, you want to talk a bit more about that one?
Yeah, cheers for that phrase, hospital pass, talking about that
one.
New Year's Day was it was just an absolute battle, wasn't it, really, from start to finish. The weather wasn't quite as bad as I think predicted, but the two teams still managed to play as if they were playing in quite bad weather, which was an impressive feat from both sides. Yeah, obviously, I think the major talking point from the first half was the red card and how that sort of impacted the game. And it's once again for Cardiff a situation where we've played against 14 men for sort of decent periods and not been able to capitalize on that, which has become a theme. Well, it's been a theme for a couple of years now, but I think as sort of it carries on each time, it becomes more and more noticeable how incapable we are of exploiting that extra player. Ospreys went 8v8 in the pack and then just lost a player from their back line, having made a switch at half time. But Cardiff just could not get the ball in a position to really hurt the Ospreys, managed to cock up our discipline big time, where I'm not going to say that like the referee was for or against us. There's been a lot of chat, like sort of ongoing debate about who the referee favoured on that day. I don't think he favoured anyone in particular, but naturally referees do slightly slide towards the team who they've given a red card to, I think, just to avoid the game sort of running away and being turned on that. And that's just happens in every game. I think if you watch most games, you will find that the team with the extra man is maybe penalised slightly more. So the answer there is for Cardiff then, be really smart about how you're playing when you've got the extra man. And we're simply not that smart. A couple of the penalties we conceded with, by senior members of our squad were quite dull. And it just prevented us from really gaining any sort of momentum. Obviously, we ended up with 2 yellow cards then as well, which evened things up for large periods of the second half. We were slightly hampered by our own team selection of 6-2 bench and Gabe Hamer-Webb having to go off very early, which meant that Louis Hennessy switched to the wing and Rory Jennings came on in the centres. Now, I mean, just focusing on the issue with that was that we basically played without a 13, which is in Cardiff's attacking system, like our main attacking threat comes from 13. There's a reason Ray Lilo is still one of our best players, is because whether it's his strike running or his decoy running from outside centre, that's basically where we're looking to hurt opposition teams with the dual playmakers at 10 and 12. And then that Lilo is the bridge to the wide guys, or taking advantage of space himself if teams are focusing too much on the wide guys. So without that cutting edge, we were very flat, very predictable through midfield, with Hennessy playing on the wing, where he probably hasn't run that much anyway in his career, but particularly not with Cardiff. I mean, he probably will have trained 3 times with Cardiff before that game, I think, maximum, as with the whole squad. And I doubt he's done much running on the wing during that. He'll have been trying to figure out what he was trying to do at outside centre for most of that. So, yeah, it meant that the backfield coverage was quite disjointed. The attack just didn't get going at all. You could say that there was other options to make substitution wise. We could have brought Ali Davis on and moved Bevan to the wing. We could have moved Ben Thomas back to fullback with Jennings coming on, pushed Winnett to the wing. We could have named Jacob Beetham as the outside back on the bench and put him in at fullback, and then nudged Winnett to the wing. So there's learning points there for Jockey around, because I think 6-2 was correct still. It was what we needed to do to go up against the Ospreys, but yeah, the composition of that and how we deal with certain injuries, I think will be reviewed in the 10 days or so between now and the next game. But yeah, ultimately it meant that we couldn't get a grip on that game. Ospreys were quite clever in how they sort of slowed things down, went from set piece to set piece, kept things tight, did what they needed to do. Probably should have won the game, really. And both teams came away disappointed ultimately. That I think Cardiff felt we couldn't take advantage of the extra man where we should have, and then Ospreys will have felt that they still should have won despite being a man down. Don't know why they didn't take the drop goal at the end rather than just try and pummel the line. But yeah, one of those, I think, a New Year's Day derby that won't live too long in the memory, despite on paper, really, if you just look at a 13-all draw with a red card and the sort of stats and stuff, you kind of think, oh, that might have been quite like intense and engrossing, but wasn't really one of those games which you came away from and thought, oh, that was a Welsh derby that really pushed the boundaries of getting towards test level stuff there.
Yeah, so a few things I want to add on there. So one thing I don't think some people make it enough is that it's 6-day turnaround versus like a 10 or 11-day turnaround. So the Ospreys are going to be a bit more fresher, so hence they're going to have that bit more energy, especially in the pack. But also, that was the strongest 23 the Ospreys have put out all season. Like, that was their very best, and we're not even pulling we're not just pulling an academy lad in at 13. We're putting someone else's academy lad at 13. I think Jockey said it was five sessions for Hennessy, but I guarantee none of those have been won. This has happened before. Where we've chosen to have Jennings and Thomas at 12 and 13 instead of pushing Winnett to the wing and Ben Thomas back. And that, I know Ben Thomas is not a great, like, he's I'd say he's a serviceable fullback option at fullback, but he's not our best. But I still feel like Winnett must have more ability to defend and attack off the wing than a 13 who's never who's just about learning that channel. So I agree with you, Dan. That was right. I agree that 6-2. The other thing for me is I think it was more necessitated because of the turnaround, but I've said this before. I don't think Faletau's an impact player as such. he looks better when he comes off the bench because he's just got that much more quality. I think same for Josh McNally. Like, I think if we were bringing Seb Davis and Alan Lawrence off the bench for those guys at the similar time, you might have seen something more in there. I mean, if anything, might not have given away some of the penalties we did in the first half. But yeah, it was just a really terrible game. It just was. I was just absolutely fuming. And the way the Ospreys took off their fullback and we still couldn't find space with the kicking game with two wingers who, by Ospreys fans' own admission, are not the best tactical aerial kicking players. So you were expecting Dan Edwards to do an awful lot and Room Morgan Williams to do a lot of covering in that backfield for the kicking game, and we still weren't getting it quite right. So that was quite frustrating for me. Again, that's another game where Beetham's boot would have been perfect. So yeah, I don't know if he's injured or if he's just not been selected, similar with Tinus. So we put out our 3-word reactions, and a lot of the stuff we got were cocky Ospreys fans. And most of them who couldn't keep the 3 words, so ignore them. But lots of things of where's De Beer, bring back Tinus, and a lot of things. So I think whether right or wrongly, Sheedy's getting a lot of flack. I mean, he did miss 4 points off the tee, which, all right, yes, Jack Walsh, Dan Edwards missed a kick as well, but 4 points puts us a little bit clearer. And then actually, Ospreys have to go for that try at the end. They're not going to. So that I think that changes some of the decision making. So I feel like we're almost inviting pressure. So a bit of a stat. So we'll go into our season review. So we're third with a minus 15 points difference, but a +2 try difference, and a lot of that points difference can get eaten up if we're making kicks. We've easily missed more than 15 points worth of kicks this season.
Just on the 10 debate, I thought it was quite heavy on social media after the game. Actually, I personally didn't feel like the 10 was where it was won or lost really for Cardiff on New Year's Day. I don't think De Beer playing would have actually like guided us to win. Obviously, it could have. I'm not psychic, but I didn't look at it and think, oh, if De Beer was playing, we definitely would have won that. I think that the 10, whoever the 10 was, would have been similarly hamstrung by the lack of strike power outside them. De Beer might have been able to put us in some slightly different areas with his kicking game, and that might have changed things a little bit. But just in terms of how we played with the outside backs not really making any ground themselves, having to kick quite a lot as well. We saw a couple of guys in those, like when Adams got the ball, when Ben Thomas was out there as well, nudging balls through rather than keeping it in hand. We just couldn't make any ground really even when we went through phases occasionally. I think the options were kind of kick to compete, but the Ospreys were dominating in the air. Kick long, but then they'd have just kicked back to compete and still dominated in the air, or try and keep the ball and maybe like tighten things up a bit more. But I mean, the Ospreys just love that. There's not many better teams of just sort of smashing people around the fringes of the breakdown than the Ospreys. That's what those guys live for. But I think the goal kicking one as well, it's slightly tempered by I haven't got the full stats to hand. I started doing them, but I mean, where Sheedy is taking these kicks from is quite mad this season. Like how many touchline conversions were handing, and De Beer wasn't any greater last season. Ben Thomas maybe slightly, but we haven't got like a top level goal kicker in the squad. Is the other option I think to say as well.
I mean, I'd argue, given some of the conversions Ben Thomas has been asked to take, both for on occasion for Cardiff and for Wales as well. Actually, he is getting those touchline ones.
Slightly more, but not like top level like goal kicker. So I mean, it was noticeable that Ben Thomas takes the tee off Sheedy for the penalty in the second half. And as captain, he stepped up to make that decision, even though I think Sheedy probably would have kicked that one as it was right in front. But yeah, I think ultimately that game was not won on the basis of that we just couldn't score any tries in the outside channels, and that there was mention of defence as well. Obviously, Sheedy will be disappointed with Edwards going past him, but I think the stat before the Ospreys game was that Sheedy had missed the same amount of tackles, was on the same tackle percentage so far this season as De Beer was last season as well. So I think it's just more noticeable with Sheedy that one or two of his have led to tries where Tuipulotu ran over him and then Edwards ghosts in.
I think the thing with De Beer though, he is a jackal threat, which is quite nice to have in the midfield. True. That is one advantage. I mean, for me, I'm just echoing what other people have said more than anything. I don't think it necessarily makes a difference. I think we were let down a bit by our front row and our scrum, but the Ospreys just managed to get, as they have pretty much as long as I can remember. I can't remember many games where we've not, we've struggled for parity. Never mind, we've certainly never seen us be dominant against them. But we made it a game that took that into field, and they made a mess of our breakdown. The ref was quite happy to let things go on a bit longer than necessarily they would. There's one where I can't remember who it was, but there's Alan Davis is going down to get the ball, hasn't got the ball yet, and the guy just goes, "Oh no, I'm counter rocket," and just pushes him straight over. And I'm like, I've seen that given, but that ref wasn't giving it, and we didn't adapt. And I think that is something we do struggle, particularly against teams that are more willing to get down and dirty. And it's something when we go on to the next half of the season, something we do have to maybe wisen up a little bit.
Yeah.
But moving on to the first half of the season as a whole. So I'm quite chuffed myself because I predicted Cardiff would be third halfway through the season. We're third. I mean the fixture list is then that. I mean, I said we still haven't played a league, so we've only played one league game outside of Wales. And that was away to Edinburgh, which was less said about that game the better. Gentlemen, how are your thoughts? How are Cardiff on track for where you expected? Are they doing a bit better? Are they doing a bit worse?
I think, is it comparative? We're in a similar situation to last season. Is that correct in terms of like our wins and losses? But I think we've done, from my perspective, I think Cardiff have improved in terms of getting the wins, I suppose, in situations where previously we would lose by a couple of points. And I think this season we've kind of been got a bit more of a nous and grit to get over the line in certain matches, which I think is really positive. And I think the squad's developed and matured a little bit, made some good signings to stabilise, like Josh McNally, big shout out to him. And I think someone like Teddy Williams has really grown into his position. And he was, not to go back over the Ospreys match, but I thought he was great in the line out and wall defence and stuff like that. And he was good against the Dragons as well. But I think, we're probably doing, probably better than I anticipated, actually. But obviously, we'd caveat that with the fact we played a lot at home, and it's kind of yet to see if if we're in a close match against the better teams, that we can then go on the right side of the result in those situations. I feel like we've done it against the teams that we're probably expected to win or be close, competitive about. This first half season, I think it's going to be a real test when we're playing those teams that we're not necessarily expected to beat, but obviously we want to be challenging and see where the squad is, and if we do have that ability to kind of get over the line in difficult situations.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole thing is caveated by who we've played and where those teams are in the league, but we are a better rugby team now than we were at this point last year, and we're a better rugby team now than we were at the start of the season as well, I think, which, ultimately, as Jockey says when he talks in the press, this is the second year of a multi-year rebuild. Last year was a massive reset, blooding all those young players. This year they'll get a little bit better again, but they're still not the finished article. Guys like Cam Winnett and Ellis Bevan, Teddy Williams, even though he's made great strides this year, the younger hookers, Evan Lloyd and Evan Daniel, they've still got so much room to go until they hit their ceilings. I think in areas where we haven't classically been great, we have been much better this season. The Maul in particular, just sort of tying it in with the New Year's Day chat as well. I don't remember the last time I watched Cardiff play Ospreys and thought, oh, we really outmauled them there. But we were dominant in that area on New Year's Day. We obviously scored 2 more tries ourselves, held them up, turned them over multiple times, and especially did it it was particularly a threat when McNally came on, but we were even in charge of it before McNally was entered, which was a positive thing to see, because I think it means that the work, the example that he's setting is passing on to those other players in the squad then as well. And you can see Teddy in particular has come on leaps and bounds in those close contact areas. We knew he was an athlete and that he had good hands, but now I think his line-out calling is still pretty good, even if the line-out wasn't quite up to the standard on New Year's Day. But yeah, some of his more work was great. And a shout out to Cornel van Zyl as well. When talking about recruitment, I think he's been a really big name to bring in to coaching our forwards and making them more of a cohesive and physical unit. And then I think Mellon's doing a good job defensively as well. We're still doing pretty well in the turnover stats, but we're not a team that sort of pigeonhole as like a full-on jackal threat now. But if you get around that, you can sort of take us apart. We are better at, particularly I thought, again, as demonstrated on New Year's Day, red zone defense under our own sticks, making teams, if not like keeping them out, making them work really hard to score. Boxing Day as well, Dragons finally get that go-ahead try later in the second half, but it took them like 35 odd phases to finally get over the line when they did. And yeah, if you're going to concede, you can at least take it out of the legs of the opposition team, and then gives yourself a chance to get back into the game then when you're kicking off and trying to make something happen. So yeah, certain elements of our game which have improved. Players individually, yeah, I think are progressing under this coaching staff. But the real test, I still think like we are some way off those top teams. We're sort of like the league table is lying really, in that we are in a bubble where I think we are better than your Zebras and your Dragons, those kind of sides at the bottom of the league. But I think we will see over the next few weeks that we're probably still quite a way off. Obviously your Leinsters and Munsters, but a couple of those middle teams as well. Glasgow, Edinburgh, a couple of the South Africans who are up there. We're sort of in our own little bubble where you might sneak into a playoff like Ospreys did last year, come in 7th or 8th, but you also might sort of finish 10th and be a couple of points off that. So some big games. I think the Connacht games will be interesting coming up. See where we are against them as a team we might be able to sort of pitch ourselves against. Benetton as well, I think, will be an interesting one, who have a great squad but have noticeably underperformed this season. So yeah, those games will be ones where I think they'll target to say, try and make a statement that we are going in the right direction. But for me, the season has been a success so far, and I think sort of notwithstanding getting pumped by 50 points every week now for the remainder of the season, it probably means that the season as a whole has already become a success, and that we've got more points, got more wins than we did last season. We've improved season on season, which will hopefully mean that the pressure is off in those games where we're playing Leinster and Munster and the big South Africans, and we just kind of go out and express ourselves and see how well we do. We don't have to sort of tense up and be like, oh, we really need a bonus point here to try and stay in the playoffs. That, as much as it would be nice to maybe get back in the Heineken Cup or sorry, whatever it's called now, or finish in the playoffs. Ultimately, that doesn't really matter in the second season of a rebuild. We're still, that will come year 3, 4, 5, where we're back trying to properly compete at the top level again. And as budgets go up, etc., we are still, massively handcuffed in terms of competing with those teams. But happy with where we are, and I think particularly now, as we'll come on to, the focus should be on Challenge Cup, getting a home knockout game and seeing where we go in that competition.
So yeah, just wanted to do a couple of things. So we're currently third on 28 points. Last season we only had we got 32 points total. So we have 1 bonus point win from beating that. We're already a win better than our record last season. So that was 4 wins, 1 draw. We're 5 wins, 1 draw. So already doing a little bit better. I think Raspetti put a thing out after the Ulster game in Cardiff we're on, saying like +7 points more than last season, for respective fixtures. We've picked up another 1 point. Well, no, we've got 2 points out of the Ospreys game for Ospreys Judgment Day, which would be our home game. So we only got 1 point for out of New Year's Day. So quite happy with that. think they're looking at playoffs being about 50 points. So that'd be another 22 points, or averaging just over two league points a game, which I think doable. But again, I mean, I predicted we'd finish about 9th, maybe 8th at a push. So I think we're probably on track doing that. So good. I think that's a good first half of the season. Definitely can see where we've improved. Can see where we still need to improve. Before we move on to events coming up this year, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please do like, share, subscribe. Subscribe to us on YouTube. You can follow us on Facebook at Cardiff Central Podcast, on the site formerly known as Twitter at Cardiff_Central. And we are now officially on Blue Sky at cardiffcentralpod.bluesky.social. We'll put all these out to share later on. So, do follow us and interact with us. Send us messages, put thoughts, opinions. We had a couple of people ask if they wanted to come up, ask to come and talk about their stories on the pod over Christmas. So we'll try and get you in probably during Six Nations weeks. So take a bit less focus on Wales. Anyway, so moving on, we're back in Europe. We're back in Europe, which is the dream I've been longing to hear ever since the Brexit vote. But let's not get too political. So first up, we've got Perpignan Saturday afternoon. We're away. That can only be viewed on EPCR TV. Perpignan are 12th in the top 14, but it is a home game. So do we think Perpignan are going to take this game fairly seriously, not so seriously? And how do you think Cardiff will and perhaps should approach this game?
I think Perpignan absolutely won't take it seriously. I'm just putting it out there. They didn't take the first 2 games seriously, and they're right in a relegation scrap in the top 14. They are 4th, just below us in the pool, but 4 points behind us. They only drew and lost. I think they drew with Cheetahs in Amsterdam and then lost to Connacht prior to Christmas. So no, I mean they might take it not quite as unseriously as they will their final game, where they go away to, I don't know, Zebra presumably. I can see a number of changes from the side that lost to Lyon in the top 14 weekend just gone. Coming, they know that we're off sort of 10, 11 days rest. They've played all through Christmas some big games. They beat La Rochelle actually weekend before last, although it was sort of a La Rochelle side rather than actual La Rochelle. A lot of your Skeltons and Kerbarlow and Ohio West, Jack Noel, Teddy Thomas, all these sort of guys. None of them were involved. But
You mean the La Rochelle team that can't beat the Toulouse Espoirs?
Yeah. So
or just about beat the Toulouse Espoirs.
So I wouldn't read too much into that result. But I mean, they've got a win, so their guys will be a bit more confident finishing 2024 well. But yeah, I wouldn't expect to see full on Perpignan this weekend. I think they'll take the chance to rest up before what will be quite a key Six Nations period for them in the top 14. With us, and Fraser, if you've got any thoughts on how we approach it.
It's a tricky one. Obviously, we got a little bit of a break, and then we got Connacht. I think it's a 6-day turnaround to Connacht, isn't it? It's on the Friday following. So I imagine, I think we might not experiment, but do a fair few changes and then go back to a stronger team against Connacht. But I'm not entirely sure how we'll approach it. We've got a vague team in my mind, but I don't know how close to reality that will be. I think, Regan Grace, playing Regan Grace, maybe Hennessy as well, get the new signings, get some minutes, but I'm not sure.
Hennessy
can't.
Yeah.
He can't because he's only on loan, and so he's tied with Bath still. Whereas I think Regan Grace, we could actually swap him out as an injury because he's now signed as a member of our club. I think the European squads are so they used to be really complicated, but at least you kind of got it. Now it's everyone can be signed, but now you can't swap anyone.
I think you can add 5 players during the pool stage, but 3 of them have to be front rowers or something. But the other thing I think, which was the other hitch with Hennessy, was that you have to be on a 3-month contract to be registered, which I imagine they're probably not giving him to us for 3 months. So yeah, the Hennessy thing is that he played Ospreys, goes back to potentially play for Bath now, because I think they might well have given up on their Champions Cup hopes, and their fixtures are quite tough. I think they've got to go to like Leinster away in the 4th round, which they may well send sort of Hennessy is the most experienced player in that team. That comes to fruition. But and then he'll be back in the Cardiff squad to play Sharks then at the end of the month. So he's coming back to us then.
Which would be handy, as we will probably have no Welsh internationals.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Fraser's right that we might see a couple of alterations here. We probably won't ask all of our Welsh squad guys to play 2 games in 6 days before heading into Six Nations camp, and that. In terms of, obviously, the aim is home knockout. I think ideally we win both games and we cruise to it, and that's not a problem. But there is a scenario where, as long as we're taking a point or something from Perpignan on the weekend, as long as we beat Connacht, then we should be able to secure a home round of 16 game as one of the best third place teams in the pool stages, probably playing one of the teams that drops down from the Heineken. Or I've got to learn who the new sponsor is. It's always the Heineken Cup.
It's in Investec. It's
Investec,
a South African investment bank.
If they want to send me some money, I will promise to remember to name them correctly. But
if anyone wants to send us any money, we'll weigh it. I'll have it tattooed on my face, to be honest. But
but yeah, so I think that the Connacht game will be the one we really go for, and it wouldn't surprise me to see a handful of changes, a couple of maybe more familiar faces left at home this weekend.
I think one familiar face though that is definitely playing both games is going to be Ray Lilo.
Yeah.
But as we sort of, because bless him, there are no other 13s.
He had his one break. One day
we gave him a week off. What more does he want? He had like the whole of Christmas off.
I mean, Josh McNally didn't even get a whole game off. He's playing everything.
I was talking about this with Nick from the Rap. I think we might have been off air by this point, but I basically said, yeah, we're basically getting every ounce of flesh out of Josh McNally. Like, he may not be able to play another season after this, but we're making sure he's played this season.
There was a moment in the Dragons match, I think, Rio Dyer shouldered him in the arm, but it looked like he'd dislocated his arm, and I was like, he's fine, he's broken. And then within a couple of minutes, he was just fine again, doing what he does. He's just indestructible, I think.
Someone whoever came on with the water was like, we don't pay you to be injured. Off you go. Speaking of the team, then, Dan, are you happy to write this one down? As I still sort of moving stuff back up to Mum, so I haven't got my notepad.
Yes. Yep.
So I said we'll start 15. I'm gonna start off with the centres just because I feel like it's easy. So I'm gonna go this really confusing order, basically because we've already said Lilo's probably playing, and then I imagine if we're gonna rest some of the Wales stars, then it might be Roy Jennings as our starting 12. Any? I think we all agreed on that pairing.
Yeah. I could see them pushing Ben to keep playing potentially just because he's been captain in the side. But yeah, I'm not against giving him a rest. Certainly, I think otherwise we might be looking at a situation where he's sort of assuming that Gatland's going to stick with him either at 10 or 12 in the Six Nations. Yeah, we could be looking at a situation where he's sort of broken by mid-February and we don't see him again for the rest of the season.
Yeah, so I think with that, Fraser, you sort of alluded to, we think we're going to see Reagan Grace. So do you want to do the rest of the back three?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably go Regan Grace. I mean, I'd want to see Jacob Beetham play at some point in the season. Why not give him a go this week, I guess, or this coming week? And then, who would be covering the wing? Because I mean, Josh Adams could be playing, but I'll give him a rest. He looked a bit battered against the Ospreys, didn't he?
Yeah, I want to rest him, but I don't know who I'd put him in there. I mean, I suppose you'd have Tom Bowen. I guess you'd end up having something like Tom Bowen and Reagan Grace as your wings.
Yeah, that's the struggle. I was thinking who comes in for Josh Adams.
But... Just from training video sleuthing again this week, I thought it was noticeable that the club put out some clips of Grace in training, and I think the first thing to say is that Adams has played a lot since coming back into the team. He well, he played in that Dragons game immediately after November, didn't he? And he's played right through. He started every game since, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, he's got a lot of minutes in the last sort of 6 weeks. And I think we'd all agree that he probably makes it back into the Wales squad and is probably quite likely to start that first game of the Six Nations as well. So he's got a lot of rugby coming up, so he'll need a rest at some point. It was noticeable that he wasn't featured in the training video so much that I saw, didn't see a huge amount of him, and that he was also at Liverpool versus Manchester United on Sunday night, which I wonder if that was, he's been given a bit of time off to recover this week and then comes back in next week potentially. The other thing from the sleuthing was that Grace appeared to be running quite a lot off the right wing in the sort of shape stuff they were doing, which I would have thought if Adams was still playing, that Grace would probably slot into the left wing there, with Adams being the slightly bigger physical of the two, and then Grace being your slightly nippier guy on the left. But it looked more like Grace was being primed as that right wing when we're playing right to left, come in short off Sheedy or whoever, or Ben Thomas, whoever's going to step in at first receiver, Roy Jennings, and then Bowen was training with the first team then on the left side. So I wonder if that is going to be Adams. This is going to be Grace on the right wing, Bowen on the left wing. And then, yeah, I agree that I'd like to see Beetham start this weekend. I think Beetham's going to have to start against Sharks at the end of the month, where Winnett's going to be in Wales Six Nations camp, assuming that Beetham isn't also in Six Nations camp, of course. Yeah, we will need him to have some minutes under his belt before that. And obviously, as we've spoken about previously, we just want to keep him as well. So playing him a bit would be quite good for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dan, I know you just had the last say, but do you want to go halfbacks? Do we break out the De Beer?
I definitely go back to Davis at 9 to start this one, and then yeah, I'm on the fringes of the 10 debate in that I'm still a big fan of Sheedy. I think I saw there were some comments that he's been disappointing or whatever. I think probably, and we tried to temper it over last summer in the podcast as well, but it was just to say that we weren't signing the Callum Sheedy that was a Wales international of a couple of years ago. That he hasn't played a huge amount of Bristol the last few years, and that he was coming here to sort of not like reignite his career as such, but just to play regularly and get back up to the level that he was. And I think he's delivered on the player that I thought he was going to be. He's added a lot to our phase play attack. I think the way he goes to the line and the decisions he makes when he carries to the line, the passing ability and vision that he's got, his kick passing. But yeah, I don't think he was ever really known as a top level tactical kicker or top level defensive 10 either. So it's a trade off in sort of what you want as a 10, really. Yeah, he's brought a lot to our attacking games, and ultimately we're winning more games with him at 10 than we were with De Beer last season. But De Beer is more physically capable. He adds that, as Harley said earlier, that jackal threat. He is probably a bit more consistent in terms of his what you're going to get from him type thing. I think Sheedy, when he's really good, is very good, but when he's a bit quieter, is a bit lower than that. Whereas with De Beer, you're going to get 7 or 8 out of 10 most weeks, but the trade-off then is that you don't get much 10 out of 10 him sort of taking the game by the scruff of the neck, and particularly in attack, really running that attack to the level where we can be successful and win at the same time. Is sort of it's quite up and down in how we play, quite loose with him at 10 then. So yeah, but that's all a big waffle to say that I don't particularly mind who plays at 10 this weekend, just sort of form wise, but I think maybe that De Beer coming in now and just giving Sheedy that little bit of rest probably isn't the end of the world. And Sherratt spoke after the Dragons game about, there's players there who haven't played as much as they would have liked, but were still in with the squad. De Beer was there as a travelling reserve and was on the pitch at the end, sort of celebrating with the boys. I think it'd be good to just reward some of those guys with a few extra minutes and get them on the pitch. So yeah, I'll go with De Beer at 10 for this one, and then maybe pencil Sheedy in what I think will likely go back to a 5-3 this weekend.
Yeah, when I was suggesting to Beer, it was more that not dropping Sheedy for form. It was more Sheedy's played a lot. De Beer hasn't.
Yeah,
There's no point having a player if you're not going to play them.
yeah, absolutely.
Take note, Gats. Should we move on to the front row? Fraser, do you want to start in front row? Or?
Yeah, I think they'll probably start Reese Litterick maybe. With I'd maybe go for I'd give David Hughes or I mean yeah we don't have a huge amount. Yeah, I'd go David Hughes to start at hooker, and then I don't know if they're going to give Kieran Azarati. I mean he didn't start against the Ospreys, but he did come on later on, didn't he? But yeah, I'd probably go Kieran Azarati, David Hughes, and Reese Litterick to start.
Two tight is bold, but
Sorry,
yeah. As it said, yeah. So it's probably Domer South. It would be Domachowski, Danny Southworth, or I guess Reese Barrett is it's another loose head option. Not that we've seen him, and we didn't see much of him last season either. So I don't know if there's some worries about him not being ready. Yeah, I think we'll probably see Litterick start again with Azarati being looked at starting at home. Do you think, Dan? Do you think Jockey's going to carry on having one or the other between Domachowski and Azarati? So one starts, one benches.
Um, I think with the props, it might slightly go against the rule of resting them this weekend to then play them against Connacht, just because I haven't watched a huge amount of Perpignan, but sort of going off stereotypes, the French pack is likely to be somewhat bigger than the Connacht pack. I would have thought, just off the top of my head. So they might go with a Dom and Azza to start this week, and then switch them out next week. Potentially, I think Hughes is right in hooker in terms of the every other scenario with Lloyd and Dav Hughes at the moment, with Belcher out for another couple of weeks at this point. But yeah, I think I'd lean towards more of a Dommer and Azza pairing this week, and then bring Litterick and Southworth back in last week, because they did struggle at in that first 60 against the Ospreys. I don't think they're individually bad players, and I think if you put them in sort of a strong type 5 generally, they would be fine. I think we missed McNally's pushing a lot in the second row in that first hour as well, and it's hard to get a grasp on hookers and how effective they are in the scrum, but it's fair to assume that Evan Lloyd, as still a relatively new convert to hooker, is still finding his feet a bit scrummaging wise. So yeah, it wasn't the easiest for that type 5 starting, but I'd beef it up this week and bring both the Ronva props in with Dav Hughes as probably our best scrummaging front row, and hope that it gives us a platform then that when we bring on Southworth and Litterick, who are probably, particularly Southworth, I think is a better ball carrier than Domachowski is, that the game's opened up a bit and they can take advantage of that then.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. So moving on to the second rows, for me, Josh McNally starting. He had a bench appearance, so he didn't have to play the whole game, so he's back.
He should be fine, really. He actually should be 110% if anything. Now he's had at least 50 minutes off.
Yeah, exactly. So he should be fine. Pairing with, so I'm a bit. Well, I suppose you could use Josh McNally as captain material, because I was thinking, well, if we haven't got Ben Thomas, do we play Teddy as our best outlook, or do we give him some time and bring him off the bench and have maybe Seb Davis?
I can just about get away with saying, yeah, let's give Ben Thomas a risk. I just think Teddy's actually undroppable at the moment.
I think he's just got, and let's be honest, if he makes a Wales squad, he's not going to play, so we might as well play him for Cardiff.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do with the second rows with the Wales squad this time round. But yeah, I just think he is so crucial to everything we're doing at the moment, Teddy. Like, it's in many respects, you may as well start handing out the Player of the Season awards now, because I think he might have already won them.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I have to agree with that. Yeah, so we're going to go with Josh and Teddy as
yeah
as us. Go on then, Dan. You can do your favorite. You can do your favorite part of selection. The one with the real headaches.
Yeah, back row is a tough one this week, a real tough one for good reason. I think it's just that we've like where people are back fit now, and this we've just you sort of a reminder of just how many good back row options we've got at the club at the moment. Like, I think with look choosing from Alex Mann, James Botham, Dan Thomas, Thomas Young, Talupe Falatau, and Alan Lawrence. If I don't think I've forgotten anyone there. I don't think Matt Martin is in there at the moment for selection. I don't think Donald's quite fit again yet. So yeah, I think Botham gets a rest probably this weekend. I think he is one who does have a feet up. Obviously, he's got a bit of an injury record. He's likely to be heavily involved with Wales during the Six Nations. So I'd give him feet up time and bring Alex Mann back into the sixth jersey. Who, yeah, like the throwing up thing is weird, but like I think
So
he's oh go on.
with the throwing up thing, I did mean to bring it up earlier. So with Lee, the overlord of all the rap podcasts, he was saying that apparently there's the thing like if a player takes on too much water, like between breaks, so they just gulp down a load of water and then exercise, then your body almost has a sort of shock reaction to the exercise. It just rejects it, it throws it back up. But the fact it keeps happening is really weird.
Yeah,
He
it's
learned.
not
You
learning.
think he'd learned by now?
Yeah. But the other thing about Man, I thought there was a couple of comments, particularly after the Dragons game, about him sort of like crossing the line a little bit, like discipline and physicality and stuff. I love that personally. I absolutely love a player just like I just we haven't had enough like proper shithouse players at Cardiff over the last couple of years, and maybe and you know it's there's some sort of Venn diagram there with having amount of shithouse players and amount you're bullied in a game and sort of that sort of thing. So yeah, I think he's great, and obviously as he gets a bit older and a bit wiser, he'll learn exactly when to pull out the shithouse and how to do it subtly so that he doesn't quite get pinged so much. But yeah, I think get him playing as much as possible and learning that is not a bad thing. So Man there, 8 then. I'd be tempted to stick with Falatau there, to be honest. I think he get like love Big Al obviously, and wouldn't have any qualms with him starting. But I think he hasn't played a huge amount. He got obviously come off the bench against Ospreys on New Year's Day. I think he's somebody who, Falatau just needs minutes really. He just needs to keep playing. Yeah, it heightens his injury risk, but as we saw last season with him coming back at Ulster, he could get injured at any moment. Really, it doesn't matter whether he plays or not. I don't think so. So for him, for Cardiff and for Wales, I think it's good that he'll play again this weekend, hopefully. And then 7, I thought Dan Thomas was great on New Year's Day. For the 60 minutes he was on, one of our top players. The turnover where he does almost get his knee ligament snapped in half by Fender is a fantastic turnover as well. Really good work. At the same time, then still a massive Thomas Young fan, and what he brings with his pace. Not really sure what the story's been with him there. Hasn't he's had what he didn't come on till quite late on New Year's Day, did he? 10 minutes or so he had there. Hasn't played a huge amount before that. Didn't seem to be injured as far as we were aware. But so I'm open to suggestion really on 7 if anyone's got any strong feelings on that either way.
I think this one you just decide who you're gonna play against Connacht. Like, if, do you feel like Connacht's going to be a game where their breakdowns will be a bit more exposed? In which case, maybe do Dan Thomas here use his extra physicality pack? Because I know Man's bulked up a bit, but he's still not the biggest guy. So actually having maybe a little bit of extra bulk in the pack, going for that physicality first, and then use Thomas Young against Connacht, where we go a little bit harder. We probably can go a little bit harder at the breakdown. They are a team that tend to give away quite a few points, and then they're attacking, a bit like us, their attacking rucks aren't the most secure. Yeah, so I'd probably lean towards that. And then I'd probably have big, we'll get on the bench in a second, but I mean, I'd probably go same 6-7, then I'd probably have Big Al as your sort of bench covers, because I think he can put 80 minutes worth of effort into 20. Which is an impressive thing for a player to be able to do, to just be able to scale it up that much. And yeah, and Falatau's just a bit of a Rolls Royce, and he just Well, actually no. To be honest, he's more of like a classic car. You've just got to keep them running constantly because as soon as you put them in the garage for a few weeks, then it's all seized up, and you have to start from scratch again. So yeah, I happy with that back row. Anything you want to add, Fraser?
Oh yeah, I think I'd agree. And I guess it's that question of man's quite lightweight with Faletau, and then if you pick Young, it would still be it's whether we'd be able to cope with the physicality of the French team. Obviously, we'd have the dynamism of Young on the edges and stuff like that. So I found that they have Pasolo Tuilangi, which that was just something I just looked up, which he is absolutely massive. Don't know if much, but I'd probably it depends how we want to play it and what we're thinking about with Connor. But I could agree with either Thomas or Young at 7, and then Man and Faletau 8 and 6.
Right, so I think if we go on to the bench, then the bench front row picks itself because it's the 3 who aren't starting, really. So it's likely to be Evan Lloyd, Danny Southworth, and Reece Littrick. Don't think there's any argument there, unless you see someone like a Reece Barrett coming in. But I'd only see him coming in if they decide to rest Dom entirely.
How old is Reece Barrett, by the way? Just thinking off the top of my head.
He's not as I can't work out if he's not as young or he's not as old as I think. I'm sure he's sort of mid-20s now. So I'm sure he's been around a while.
2002, so as I make him turning 23 this year. I wondered then, just there's a Wales under-20 against sort of regional academy under-23 game at the Arms Park on Friday. I wonder if he might end up in the regional academy under-23 team for that, potentially getting a bit of minutes there, unless we do actually need him to go out to Perpignan as a travelling reserve. But yeah, I agree with I think the forward replacements kind of pick themselves generally with Lloyd, Southworth, Litterick. I think Seb Davis then is your replacement second row, and Alan Lawrence is your replacement back row. There, I think is they pretty much select themselves this weekend. If you're resting both them, you're quite restricted with your options. If Young is your back row choice and Seb is still ahead of Thornton, then that's pretty much what I go for. Replacement 9. I've penciled Bevan in. Is there any
Mulder chaos?
Yeah, any calls for Mulder? I don't know. I still we haven't seen enough of him really, but still in the glimpses that we have, I don't know if we've seen really the best of him at all.
So I mean,
I think Bevan. I mean, Bevan hasn't really played that much this season. That's all. He's at risk of becoming that cliched Welsh international player who almost never plays for the for their club.
Yeah, but because we don't pick him rather than because he's injured or whatever as well. Outside backs then is a bit interesting with just sort of not really many options. Like after you've got guys who ideally would be rested, but I think some of them might have to be involved. So you've got Ben Thomas, Cam Winnett, and Josh Adams. You've got Sheedy then as well. We obviously don't have Hennessy available. I don't think we'll see any of the other young guys. I don't think Steph Emmanuel or Elijah Evans or any of them will step up. I think they'll be involved with that game at the Arms Park on the Friday night and left to do that. So I think my pitch would be, although we're trying to rest Adams a bit, do you take him in the 23 jersey and bring him on for Grace just because you want to manage Grace's sort of return to playing time a little bit and you don't want to immediately ask him to play 80 minutes, having only really played I think he played 60 for Bath before Christmas since Wales' summer tour last year.
Yeah, I said I think he played that one Champions Cup game before Christmas. I think that's definitely a good shout. The other crazy idea I had.
Oh, here we go.
Despite us saying no 6-2s, we go 6-2 and we have Thomas Young and Thomas Young covers wing in 7. In a very, in a la Josh Bayliss having to do what I think was close to 60 minutes on the wing for Bath on the weekend with their mad 7-1 and instantly a back got injured.
But there was a moment in the first, I think it was in the first half at the Ospreys game after Gabe had gone off, where Adams went down briefly, and it was Young who was sort of priming to come on at that point. So I can only assume that they were going to play him on the wing, unless that was the moment we picked to revolutionise rugby formations once again and got 9 in the pack. It's like somehow, but yeah,
It'll never beat the Super number 8 for the Canadian scrum in 1987 World Cup, where they went to a 10-man scrum.
But yeah, I think it's a fair call to make that does sort of circumstances dictate that we have to go 6-2 if we're trying to. And ideally, I don't think we would this weekend. I think we'd stick 5-3. But yeah,
I think the most likely is you probably have maybe if we're starting De Beer, you maybe go Sheedy with in light of wanting to keep Ben Thomas give Ben Thomas a bit more of a rest.
Yeah,
because we don't want him to get to the limits where contracts will say, oh, well, he's played so many minutes for Wales now.
yeah.
So you don't want to basically get to the end of the season and not be able to play him. So I think maybe you go Sheedy and Adams and Adams covers 30. Sorry, I feel physically sick. It's like second row's covering 6.
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be Adams covering 13, really, isn't it? Literally no other choice
there is no one else. That's the thing.
Yeah.
If Ray Lilo goes down, they're going to pump him full of as much legal drug as they can to keep him on that pitch and literally strap bits of they're going to harvest a poor orphan in Perpignan.
We'll have to wait and see the Bath team as well. If Hennessy's not in it, then maybe we can put a mustache on Louis Hennessy and he can run on and tell the ref that his name is actually Rory Jennings or something like that. Yeah, he's definitely not Louis Hennessy and he's definitely registered to play.
No, I'm Mason Grady. I got better.
Yeah,
I had to shrink a bit, but I got better. Right, so Dan, do you mind just reading through the 23 for us?
So we got what order do you want it? I don't want to step out of line here. Like what
you do the order you do the order you want, and I will critique it afterwards.
Okay, I read my teams when they're written down, 15 to 9 and 1 to 8. So I
Correct.
go it's Beetham, Grace, and Bowen in the back 3, and then Lilo, Jennings, De Beer, and Davis, 3/4 line. The pack then Domachowski, David Hughes, Kieran Azarati, Teddy Williams, Josh McNally, Alex Mann, Dan Thomas, Talupe Falatau, and a bench of Evan Lloyd, Danny Southworth, Reese Litterick, Seb Davis, Alan Lawrence, Ellis Bevan, Callum Sheedy, and Josh Adams.
That's good. Anyone have any issues with that? Anything they want to throw in?
No, sounds good.
Right.
Yeah.
So just quickly, just some quick predictions. Then we'll just go win or loss. Do you think is going to win the game?
I'm going to go.
So
I'm going to go. I'm going to go bonus point loss. Because I think I was a bit too optimistic in the last prediction. I was talking out of my ass as I proved myself to be. So I'm going to go bonus point loss. A solid performance.
If someone offered me a bonus point last night, I'd take it, I reckon. But I've just got a sneaky feeling we might do all right this weekend. I don't know why. A bit of a break. I'm presuming the weather is nice in sort of the south of France there. Bit of a presumption, but usually is. If not absolutely freezing. But so I think it'll just be quite a good afternoon for us to chuck the ball about a bit. I think we'll be a slightly unknown quantity for Perpignan in that our team will be not exactly what they expect. They themselves will obviously have quite a lot of new faces and different combinations. So yeah, I'm hopeful that plays into our hands and we are able to, I think it'd be quite a high scoring game, but similar to that Lyon one, but we just come out on top this time where Perpignan don't quite have the quality that Lyon did and we have slightly more quality in our 23.
yeah, sounds good. I said I think it's going to be quite close. I think Cardiff again probably might just. I think it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a couple of points either way, so we might sneak it with the last penalty, or we might get diddled by last penalty. I don't. And I'm very fine. Normally, I'm well up for the Challenge Cup, and this year I'm just not. The vibe isn't there for me this year.
Apparently, it's meant to be raining and 17 degrees, which is a weird combination of.
Oh, that is weird. That's actually none of the things I predicted the weather to be as well. So actually, if you are BBC Weather and you do want me to present the weather, I can get it drastically wrong, and that is all the sort of qualifications that is needed to do that.
Absolutely. And on that note of I can do your job better than you from Dan, it's time to end. Thank you, Fraser. Thank you, Dan, for joining me, and thank you all for listening. Good night.